2-1. Okay. All right. So caste, the caste system is something that on the surface looks like it's uniquely Indian, but it's not. Okay. So let's get a couple of words out of the way first. Okay. These are going to be different ways that that people stratify their society, different ways that people rank their society. Okay. So the first word we need to get is class. CLASS, class. So class is an economic term. Okay. So lower class means poor, upper class means rich. Okay. You can move up and down in class, right? So a good example would be somebody like Oprah Winfrey, right? Oprah Winfrey was born poor, but has risen up and is now worth, billions of dollars. Okay. So that's class. That's moving up and down in income level or in wealth. Okay. The other division is race. Race is the social construct that humans attach to a biological marker. It's a social construct that humans attach to a biological marker, usually skin color. Okay? Race doesn't actually exist in the world of biology. There's no such thing as race. Doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't make any sense, but it's all a social construct, right? This is how you can get things like Homer Plessy being considered black in the United States, even though he's only 1/16 black, right? Um, I bet you guys have met Indians who have pretty dark skin, haven't you? Right? There's some Indians who have very dark skin. In fact, there's many, many, many Indians from India who have darker skin than many black people in the United States, right? In fact, I'd be willing to bet that Raul, Yash, and Dhruv, all of you have darker skin than Homer Plessy, who looked white, right? And yet none of you are considered black, right? This lets you know that the color of the skin doesn't actually matter in a lot of ways, right? That the race is the social construct. Race is the social construct, and people attach that meaning to it. Okay? Here's the deep, dark, dirty secret. The racial system in the United States is actually a super secret caste system. Okay? The race system in the United States is actually a caste. So, what the heck is a caste system? A caste system, CASTE, caste, a caste system is a social, cultural, political division of people, social, cultural, political, and economic, throw economic. Social, cultural, political, and economic division of people based on their birth. Caste cannot be changed. Caste cannot be changed even if people make money. All right. So think about the United States, for example, right? When Barack Obama becomes president, Barack Obama he never ceases to be black, right? How many times do people talk about Barack Obama and don't mention that he's black? Right? Like how often do you like if you read like 3 like history articles about Barack Obama, if you read 10 articles about Barack Obama, how many of those articles will mention that he's black? I'd be willing to bet all of them, right? And that's because in the United States, African Americans are the lowest caste. And so it's something that Barack Obama can never escape, even when he's a president, right? Even when he's president. Now, let's get to the Indian caste system, okay? And as we go through the Indian caste system, we'll compare it to caste systems around the world. But the racial system of the United States is a caste system. The racial system of South Africa is a caste system. Okay. And the caste system of India is a caste system as well. Okay. So you're going to see some parallels here. All right. So in India, let's get some words out of the way first. Okay. The first vocab word, the first India specific vocab word we have is Varna. Varna. So Varna is a level. It's a level or a division. So in the Indian system, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Varnas. You see what I'm saying? 4, 5. Okay. Jati means job or occupation, and a jati are all the different flavors of the Varna. So the Kshatriyas, Varna, the rulers, administrators, warriors would be the jatis within that. Does that make sense to you? Right? Artisans, tradesmen, farmers, merchants are the jatis within the Varna of Vaishya. Is that, you guys with me on the vocab words? Vocab terminology? Okay. All right. So caste, the word caste is not an Indian word. The word caste is actually a Portuguese word that when the Portuguese had started the slave trade and the Portuguese was sailing around the world looking for sweet, sweet slaves to capture, they arrived in India and they said, hey, India, do you have either A, slaves that we can take, or B, people who want to buy our slaves? Right? And the Indians are like, nah, we're cool. We already have untouchables. They're basically like our slaves, right? And the Portuguese looked at it and they said, ooh, look at that. That's great. You know what you have? A casta. Casta is the Portuguese word for race. And so the race system of India became known as the caste system of India. Okay. Prior to that, the Indians didn't have that word. The Indians called them Varnas. Right. So just gives you an idea of how intimately tied race and caste is, right? That it's so intimately tied that super secret cognate here, the word is actually race. So let's go back in time, way, way back into ancient Hindu history. According to the ancient Hindu history, the creator god, who is one of the most important gods in Hinduism, his name is Brahma. Brahma, Brahma, Brahma. Did we lose Dhruv?
My internet crashed. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're here. You're good. You're good. You just got off my screen for a sec. All right. So Brahma is the creator. Brahma, according to Hinduism, the three most important gods are Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the maintainer, and Shiva, the destroyer. Right? Those are the three gods from which everything comes, essentially. Right? And Brahma created humans. And when Brahma created humans, Brahma used the different parts of his body to do it. So, according to the Indian mythology, his head was used to create the Brahmins, right? They are the most like Brahma. They are the Brahmins. These are the priests and academics. These are like the spiritual leaders, right? From his arms do all the work and his arms do all the busy stuff, right? And so his arms create the Kshatriyas, which are the rulers and warrior class, right? These are the people who are like running your government. Okay. So if you're thinking about it, this would be like Gandhi, this would be like Nehru, right? If Gandhi is our spiritual leader, Nehru and Patel are our Kshatriyas, right? All right. So from his legs, he creates the Vaishnavas, the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas are like the people who get things done, right? The farmers, the merchants, the tradesmen, those kinds of things. Okay. And then from his feet are the lowest people, the people that get stepped on. They're the Shudras. These are the manual laborers, right? These are like the non-skilled people. So a Vaishya may own the farm, but the Shudra is the guy digging the ditches on the farm. Does that make sense to you guys? You with me on that? In the original mythology, there is an underclass of people that are so low that they aren't even considered human in the original mythology. And that underclass is what we call Dalits. Now, this is, we're talking ancient stuff, right? I know I've never heard of any Indian in the modern world today who would say Dalits aren't human, right? But the same way that Americans would say that their slaves weren't human, so too do the Indians say that the Dalits aren't human, right? You see where we're going with this, right? There's no American today who would say black people are not human, right? But in American history, we definitely have a lot of examples of that, right? Indians are the same way, right? There's no Indian today who would say a Dalit isn't human, but we have a lot of precedent for Indians, you know. Okay. Eventually, the Dalits get kind of added as the mythology evolves. Like we're talking like thousands of years old mythology, right? So as it evolves, eventually the Dalits get kind of added into the system, but usually you'll depict it as a triangle and then like a rectangle on the bottom that's separated, right? Because the Dalits are so low. The Dalits are the people who do the jobs that are the worst, dirtiest, nastiest jobs in society. They're the people who like handle the corpses. They're the people who handle the sewage. They're the people who are like the leather. They make leather, right? According to Hinduism, you know, killing cows is almost like killing people, right? Killing cows is a spiritual, a violation of spiritual teachings, right? And so, you know, making leather puts you on the bottom. Okay. So these would be people who like kill cows and like handle dead bodies and handle, you know, sewage and stuff like that. Okay. All right. So these are our names here. Okay. How do we know who's where? Okay. These are the Dalits. Here's some pictures of Dalits. These are some Dalits. This is Calcutta. Here's some Dalits in Mumbai. Here's some Dalits in Delhi. So how do we figure this out? Here we go. All right, so this is kind of 8 different ways to understand caste. This is not part of ancient Indian philosophy. This is like modern day sociologists and historians have kind of put this together. Okay. I think it makes the most sense in your notes to make them like a list because I want you to put stuff with them. You know, like what, like 1 or 2 sentences of description on all of them. You can draw it graphically if you want, right? But I want you to have the descriptions on there. All right. Do you guys need a moment or do you want me to get going? Give me a thumbs up if I can get going. All right, let's go. All right, so let's start up here. Divine will, right? All caste systems in the world, including the Indian one, they all start with this idea that God made the system. Okay, any kind of prejudice is kind of inherently doesn't make sense, right? Prejudice is just irrational. It doesn't make sense. It's, you know, it's kind of bonkers because you're just saying that I'm better than you because of like my eye color or something, right? That doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. And so what you have to do is you have to link it to God or link it to divine will. In the case of India, they've linked it to Brahma and his creation myth. In the case of the United States and the Western world, they say that the black skin is the mark of Cain or the mark of Ham from the book of Elijah, right? That right. We saw that in the apartheid, right? When they were saying that the whites were blessed from God, right? The whites were blessed from God, and it was their duty to come out here and, you know, spread the social hierarchy, right? Like we've seen this a couple of times, haven't we? Okay, so God, you have to have God here. That explains the irrationality. Heritability, your caste has to be inherited. In the case of India, your caste is inherited from your father, and it's attached to your last name. It's inherited by your father, and it's attached to your last name. In the case of the United States, your caste is inherited from your mother. In fact, in the United States, they legally defined it that way during the colonial periods. That way, slave owners could rape their slaves and produce children who were still slaves. Hashtag Thomas Jefferson, right? That slave owners were able to rape their slaves. You know, if I rape my slave and she produces a little half-white baby, right, I can just sell the baby off because the baby inherited his caste from mom, right? So in case you weren't like a little bit on the fence about the American racial system, right? Here you go. Here's another little example that it's, you know, built to support rape as well. So that's all right. So next is endogamy. Endogamy means having mating within your own group. Mating within your own group. So mating within your own group. Dalits mate within their own group, just like African Americans mate within their own group, right? But so do the Brahmins up top, the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, they mate within them, right? Like inter-caste marriages in India today are only 6%. They're only 6% of all the marriages in India. Drew, if you had to make a guess, how many marriages in the United States are interracial? What percent?
Probably just as much, like maybe 5%.
6%, baby. Yeah. The United States is also about 6% interracial marriage. So it gives you an idea, right? You're not going to have very many people who violate this caste. So in India, like if you are, you know, the father and your daughters are like a Kshatriya, right? And then she comes home and says, "Oh, daddy, I met this great Dalit that I want to marry," right? You probably will forbid the marriage. Probably, right? And this is reinforced by the Indian tradition of arranged marriages, right? In India, still a little more than half of marriages are arranged. Okay. All right. So purity versus pollution. Purity versus pollution. This is where the upper caste is obsessed with the idea that interacting with the lower caste will violate their purity, that they are the most pure people. So we've seen this in the United States, right? Like when Black people in the civil rights movement tried to use swimming pools, what did the white people do?
They dumped acid in it.
They dumped acid on them. They would rather dump acid into their pool than to allow Black people to swim in it, right? And it's this idea that your Black skin will somehow pollute the water, right? And it'll like seep into all your white skin or something like that, right? It was so obsessive in the United States that they wouldn't even let Black people into the ocean, right? Saying that they're going to pollute the ocean, remember, right? In Florida, okay? India has a lot of that same stuff. Dalits aren't allowed to use public, you know, bathing and stuff like that. Dalits aren't allowed to use the same wells or the same drinking fountains. But it also like gets manifested in other ways, right? This purity versus pollution comes into the Dalit nickname untouchables, that you are so worried about pollution that you won't even touch them. Untouchables, right? One of the big problems in India today when you're dealing with like Dalit education is that teachers have been forced to integrate their classrooms. So you have Dalit kids in the classroom next to upper caste kids, right? But the problem is that a lot of the teachers will refuse to grade the homework and classwork that the Dalit kids write because the teacher is scared that even handling the paper will get that untouchable Dalit all over me. And so I won't even touch the paper. I just won't even collect it. And if the Dalit tries to turn it in on my desk, I'll just take my pen and just push it off the table and then let the janitor clean it up. Right? It's a huge problem in India that teachers won't even grade Dalit's homework that way. Okay, and that's like today. I'm not talking ancient. I'm talking like today. Like I was reading an educational report from like 2015. Okay. All right. Occupational hierarchy. Occupational hierarchy. Each caste is going to have jobs attached to it, and you're going to be kind of born into these occupations. In the case of India, most of the last names in India have to do with an occupation. Now that's not that weird, right? Because if you think about European names, they also have to do with occupations, right? Most people's last names have to do with either a location or an occupation, right? And so India's no different. India's no different, right? Do you guys have occupations in your names? I don't speak your languages, so I don't know. Huang, what's your last name? What does Huang mean? It's Korean, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it means like any occupation.
You know what it means?
I mean, like in like Chinese characters, which is what Koreans used, it means like yellow, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so that probably is a location name. It probably means that you're from the Yellow River, or the original Huangs back in the day, or from the Yellow River, probably. How about Ganath? What does it mean?
Uh, I don't think there's any tag to it that I know of.
Probably there is, and you just don't know. How about you, Ratchakonda?
The Konda part of Rachakonda means mountain. That's all I know.
So it's probably a location name again,
Yeah.
unless the Ratchakonda means like a miner, right? Like from mining in the mountains or something like that, right? It could be one of those. How about you, Dave?
I do not know.
Oh, come on now. How about you, Lou?
I do not think there's a particular meaning to mine.
There is. I guarantee there is, right? So Veenstra is a noble name. It means from the swamp, right? It lets you know what part of the Caste my family was from. We're the people from the swamp, right? Oh, well, what are you going to do? All right. But if you think about names in the United States, right, a lot of names are occupational names. Smith is an occupational name. Smith, Miller, Potter, right? They're all a lot of those kinds of names. There's all sorts of names. Okay. All right. Stigma. All right. So a stigma is something that they should be ashamed of. And so the caste is built in to have this stigma attached to it. Okay, so every time a Dalit interacts with somebody of a higher caste, that higher caste person will talk to them and remind them of their place. Okay, this comes up a lot of times when you talk to Indian people, and like when you talk to Americans, the get to know you question is usually where do you work or what do you do, right? In India, the get to know you question is what does your father do? Right? And that's the Indian trying to figure out where in the caste you go. Now, this may sound uncharitable because I'm sure that if you guys think about this, your parents, Drew, Rahul, and Yash, your parents probably do this, right? But I don't want you to think that your parents are like bigoted, racist monsters. I don't want you to think that, right? It's so ingrained in just the way conversation works that they probably do it and they don't even think about it. That even people who are opposed to the caste system probably still do it, right? I know a bunch of Indian parents do this because I've had Indian parents say that to me in parent teacher conferences, right? And they're being nice to me, they're being respectful, but they're being nice. They're just having a conversation, but it's such a natural thing that it comes up within the conversation within the first minute or two that they ask me, right? This parent teacher conferences, I had 2 Indian parents ask me, right? Yeah, and it's just so ingrained. The stigma gets manifested a lot of ways, right? All of you guys, all 5 of you guys are people of color in the United States. How often, when you interact with a white person for the first time, how often do they mention your race within the first 10 minutes? How often do you think that happens? Like, you really think this through? How often do you think that happens? Drew, out of 100 interactions with people, how often do you think it would happen?
See, I'm a rare exception, and I was living in California for like 9 years, so people are used to Indian there. They never bring it up. But like I would say in probably a state like Utah, I would guess at least more than 75% of the conversation with maybe a white person, they would bring up curry or something.
It brings up, yeah, exactly, yeah, and it always gets, yeah, bro, yeah, it always gets manifested in some like, And something, even when they're trying to be nice, right? They're like, oh, Michael Liu, oh, you're Chinese? Oh, I love Chinese food, right? Am I wrong? How often does that come up? All the time, right? They say, oh, Ganath, oh, that's an Indian name. Oh, you know what? I had this really, really good chicken marsala last week. It was so good, right? Like, how often does that come up? Or they'll say something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I have a friend. The classic, right? The classic is, I'm a friend of you because I have a black friend at home, right? My coworker, you know him, Jamal. Yeah, right. That's the stigma. That's the stigma of caste working itself. So when a Utah says that to you, that's them unconsciously putting you in your place in the caste. Okay. And they oftentimes don't mean to say it. They don't realize what they're doing, right? But they are. That's what, people call microaggressions. That's what a microaggression is. All right. So violence and cruelty. This is probably not surprising to you, but any kind of hierarchy of people must be enforced with violence. Now, violence is going to come in two flavors of violence. The first flavor is going to be cultural, unofficial violence. This is going to be lynch mobs and stuff, right? Lynch mobs, it's going to be people beating you up. It's going to be people beating up your kid at home. It's going to be that kind of stuff, right? This is Ida B. Wells, people hanging in the trees. Okay. The United States likes its lynch mobs to hang people, right? In India, the favored lynch mob is burning people or throwing acid on them, right? I don't want you guys to think that I'm racist here. Indians are perfectly capable of murdering people in any number of ways, right? It's just kind of culturally speaking, burning people is, seems to be the thing to do, where hanging people in the United States seems to be the thing to do. Flavor one is that unofficial cultural violence. Flavor two is the use of official violence, as in police violence or army violence, police or military violence, right? The police system of any kind of government with any kind of society that has a caste like this, the police are going to be the violent enforcers of order. And so when the lower caste starts to chant Black Lives Matter, the upper caste sends the cops to break their skulls. Right? And we've seen how many examples of this in my class so far? Like 10,000 examples, right? 10,000 examples or so, some roughly. Yeah. All right. Last up, inherent superiority. Inherent superiority is kind of the mirror version of stigma, is that the entire caste system is, everything in the caste system is built by the upper caste in order to hold their place. They believe that they are so inherently superior that they can make whatever choice they want to make and do whatever they want. And they think that they're right to enforce this. I encountered this last night. I'm in a college class, and the college class is teaching us how to teach ELL students, like English language learning students, right? And the teacher, a upper caste white lady, right? She was telling us that we had to go to all of our online students' houses and tell them that they had to send their kids back to school because the school is safe from coronavirus, right? Especially ELL students, right? So she says, go to the ELL house where they don't speak English and tell them to send their kids to school, right? She was trying to tell us that being in school is more valuable, right? And it's better than being online, which I think everyone in the world agrees, right? Just about. All right, except for Yash, who doesn't want to interact with anybody, right? But the rest of us all agree that online sucks more, right? But she had such upper caste racism built into her idea. I called her out on it. I called her out in our Zoom meeting. I said, I'm sorry. I'm like, we can't go into someone's house and tell them how to raise their kids or how to assess the health dangers for their families. I said, what makes us say that we can do that, especially to people who don't even speak English and don't understand the system, right? And I said, no one would do that to me. I said, if some teacher came to my house and tried to tell me how to raise my kid, I would tell them to go to hell and kick them out of my house. But I'd be willing to bet that no one is going to come and tell a white man how to raise his kids. And yet you are all telling me to go tell a bunch of, you know, mothers of color to go how to do it, right? I said, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible, and in this case, racist. I called her out, right? And all the other students in the class who were all teachers, they're all like, you know, giving me snaps for it. And the lady was like, she was spun. Like she was like, she didn't know what to do because she had been called racist. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, I'm not a racist. I have a black friend. And I was like, sorry, that's not how it works, lady. Anyway, all right. This is a universal kind of diagnosis, okay? You can use this diagnosis in India. You can use it in South Africa. You can use it in the United States. I'm going to show you that you can use it in Ireland as well, right? All right. So let's get to the hard history that you need, okay? So make it the next big letter. Let's jump down, okay? We have a couple of vocab words that we need here. Scheduled castes or scheduled tribes. This is an India-specific term. This is the government official term for lower caste people. They call them scheduled castes. That's like the politically correct term, and that's the government term. That's like the Indian version of saying African American versus black, right? This is the Indian version of that. Okay, so a scheduled caste is the lower castes. The less politically correct term, but is still fairly common, is to call them the backwards class. Not shocking why this is not very common anymore. This would be the equivalent of like an American saying something like colored people or Negroes, right? This is the same kind of way that an Indian would use this term. In India, it's actually illegal to use the term untouchable, right? That word was made illegal. You can actually get fined if you use the word now. Okay. The leader of the Dalit rights movement is this man right here, B.R. Ambedkar. So Ambedkar is a Dalit himself, and he's from near Mumbai, from a town near Mumbai somewhere. And he was a Dalit, and he was not allowed to go to school. He did have enough financial connections that he got out of India. He traveled to England and he got a degree, a PhD in economics. He actually became the first Indian to ever get a PhD in economics outside of India, right? From a Western university. And he came back to India and became a Dalit rights activist. He wasn't able to get a job as an economist because he was a Dalit. And so he just founded the Dalit rights organizations. This is in the 30s, in the late 20s and 30s. He will go on to become known as the father of the Indian Constitution. He's actually the primary author of the Constitution. He's the primary author of the Constitution. So he would write it as like the first draft, and then people would like edit it and stuff. So he's the father of the Indian Constitution. Sometimes he's called the father of Indian democracy, right? So in some ways, he's both the Martin Luther King of India, and he's also the James Madison of India in some ways, right? Which is pretty cool. That's like a pretty nice resume, don't you think? Right? Ambedkar is the leader of this movement. Now, prior to independence, this whole slide is prior to independence. Prior to independence, a Dalit rights movement started that Ambedkar was aware of and supported, but he wasn't directly connected to it. It was called the Self-Respect Movement. And the Self-Respect Movement is founded, it's founded by these two guys. It's founded, so Ramanathan over here, Ramanathan was the founder. Ramasamy is like the second guy, and these two guys became the champions of the movement, okay? All through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, up into the 60s. The self-respect movement was encouraging Dalits to think of themselves outside of the caste system. Don't define yourself based on what the Brahmins and Kshatriyas say. Define yourself based on your own self-worth. Does that sound familiar to you guys? That movement should sound very familiar to you.
And isn't it the Black Power movement?
It's exactly the Black Power movement. What else is it? What's the South African version? The US version was Black Power. What was the South African version?
Was it Black consciousness?
Absolutely correct, right? Black Power, Black consciousness, self-respect movement, all three of these movements are doing the same thing. Like I told you, there would be some strong parallels, right? Well, here you go. All right. Ambedkar is probably most famous for his feud with Gandhi in the 1930s. Okay, in the 1930s, Gandhi, who was super, super religious and spiritual, also a Brahmin, Gandhi was a supporter of the caste system. He believed that the caste system was religiously ordained by the gods and that the caste system was morally correct. The lower caste you are, the more you are being punished for your previous lives. When you do bad things in this world and you die, right, the justice that you get is in reincarnation. If you are reincarnated as a bad person, you're reincarnated as a Dalit, you're reincarnated as some kind of broken gutter trash, that you should live that life as a punishment for what you did. Gandhi believed that the caste system was right. Gandhi tries to repackage it. The Dalits, he tries to repackage them as Harjans, which means children of God. But Ambedkar is not buying it. Ambedkar refuses this definition. In fact, most people do. Ambedkar says, we are the Dalits because Dalit means the people who are crushed. He says, yeah, we're all children of God. Yeah, we're all children of God, but some of us are crushed under the feet of the others. They're going to get in this fight, and they're eventually going to come up with a compromise called the Pune Pact. Give me just a moment, you guys. They're going to come up with a compromise called the Pune Pact, and the Pune Pact reserves a certain number of seats in the parliament for the scheduled castes. Here's the trick. According to the Pune Pact, the upper castes get to approve who's sitting in those scheduled caste seats. So the scheduled castes, the Dalits put people in the seats, but only Dalits who are acceptable by the upper caste. Okay, we're not totally done. So on Thursday, I'll do a little bit of time with the caste system. We'll finish this up, and then we'll do the essays. So on Thursday, come to class with your essays ready to go, and we'll do a little bit of Dalit stuff, and then we'll do essays. Okay? Are you guys good? My mock trial students are all in the room, so I gotta go. All right? I'll see you later, gentlemen.